Another most important thing, so we discussed this. Okay, now we are going to study about the class. We study almost everything about UIP, the radiology, histopath, clinical. Okay, now important point is that we need to discuss about what the classification or the basically the categories that are being enlisted regarding this IPF or UIP combo, and you know what is the ATS and your Fleshner Society says. Okay, what are the guidelines for that? How to diagnose it? So the last step in this, or the last mile that we have to put, is how to diagnose. Ultimately, we discuss everything. So we have discussed a typical pattern of UIP. Okay, typical UIP pattern we have discussed. Now, so how to diagnose thing? I'll need to give you categories in which we have divided it. Okay, so there is a, if you talk about the latest classification or the latest approach to diagnosis, so there are two associations that you need to know. Two association. One is your Fleshner Society. Fleshner Society. Okay. And other thing is your other one is your joint working group. Joint working group. So it's a joint working group of so many associations. So what are they? One is your American Thoracic Society, that is your ATS. Another is your European Respiratory Society. Third is your Japanese Respiratory Society, and fourth is your Latin American Thoracic Society. So you'll see joint working group formed by these. They came together, these associations, ERS, JRS, and LETS. Okay, and they review the classification or the categories of UIP. Okay, or idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and these. So there are one classification is this, that is given by Fleshner Society, and one is given by joint working group 2. There are minor differences between these classifications, minor differences only. Okay, not major differences, and we'll discuss them also. So these are the diagnostic categories they gave. Okay, these two things, they have given diagnostic categories of UIP. Okay, and the latest I could find was, they have given it in 2018. This is a very beautiful article. I will discuss, I'll refer to the viewers to go through that article, although you do not need it. If you have watched this video, I've discussed almost everything, and the remaining part also I'll discuss. Okay, but if you want to go, you can go. Okay, I'll put the link in the description also, or I put the PDF there in the description. Just look at the article. Okay, so it's important. So they have given diagnostic categories. Now what are those diagnostic categories? That is more important. So if you look at the books, if you go to the books, your book might be giving in a very old diagnostic categories. Okay, where you use possible term. Now possible term is outdated. You do not use possible UIP. Okay, so there are other terms that have come up, and that is why it is important to be updated. So let's discuss that. What exactly is the new diagnostic categories? Okay, so there is Fleshner and there is a joint working group. Okay, so the diagnostic category is given by both. Diagnostic categories given by both is same. Okay, and there are 4 diagnostic categories that have been given by both, but the features or the basically diagnostic features and distribution. Okay, so what are the that are different. Distribution and diagnostic features are different, imaging features are different, but the categories, name of the categories is same in both, whether Fleshner or joint working group. So what are they? The first category is what is your typical UIP, which we discussed. Typical UIP. Okay, second category that they have listed is, now earlier it was possible UIP. Possible UIP was there. Earlier there were 3 categories only: typical UIP, possible UIP, and your inconsistent with UIP. But now the latest classification, you have 4 categories: typical UIP, second is your probable UIP, third you have indeterminate UIP, and fourth is what you have, alternative diagnosis. CT features with alternative diagnosis. Okay, so these are the 4 categories. Now, in front of all these 4 categories, there are 2 things that are listed. One is your distribution, and one is your what, imaging features. Now, 2 things are listed for all these categories, 4 categories, and there are minor differences among Fleshner and joint working group in these parts, distribution and imaging. And what are they? Just look at the article only. Okay, I'll go with the article. I'll make you see the article. What are there? Okay, but I'll tell you myself what exactly, so that you remember the key points. Okay, see, we know what is typical UIP, and typical UIP distribution, you know, it is subplural. It is subplural, and bases are affected. Okay, this is a typical distribution. Okay, and we saw what exactly is. You will see reticulations. That was one finding. You see honeycombing. That is the most important finding that is there in typical. Okay, what else? But other thing that you need to know is that you have to rule out few findings. Findings suggestive of alternative diagnosis should be ruled out. Remember this thing. This is the third important point. And what are the findings that suggest alternative diagnosis? I'll enlist them one by one. Okay, what are they? I will give you a list of the findings which goes against UIP, and whenever you have them, you think of alternative diagnosis. Okay, that is gonna that list will come in this category. Okay, that if you have those imaging features, you should think of diagnosis against UIP. So that list comes here, but for these above 3 categories, you have to rule out those findings also to make, you know, diagnosis in these 3 categories. Okay, so you have distribution, subpleural and bases, and you have this reticulation, honeycombing. Obviously you can have traction bronchiectasis as well. Okay, it goes without saying, we'll have traction bronchiectasis. Okay, so these 4 findings are there. Okay, now what is change in probable and what is change in indeterminate UIP? So we know what is typical. Okay, so let's look at the, you know, article. So I'll show you the article, very beautiful article. Okay, this is the article. Okay, and see this article, the, you know, front page of this article. This is your radiology cardiothoracic imaging, practical imaging interpretation in patients suspected of having IPF. So it's basically about the radiology working group of Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. So look at the image, and this image, and see this. So it's a comparison of 2018 National Society white paper and 2018 joint working group for diagnostic categories of UIP based on CT patterns. Okay, and let's discuss that. Okay, see, so again these are the 4 categories. These are 4 categories: typical UIP, probable UIP, indeterminate for UIP, and the 4th is CT features most consistent with a non-IPF diagnosis or alternative diagnosis. Now what are the features? See, look at this. Okay, see, you have typical UIP. Let me little this and black. Okay, so you have typical UIP and distribution. C, subpleural distribution, basal predominant abnormalities. Okay, it is heterogeneous. Obviously, we know it goes without saying because it also correlates with the histopath image. Okay, it can be diffuse also. See, 80% cases are heterogeneous. 20% cases are diffuse, in which you have, you know, all areas affected equally. 80% cases are heterogeneous, in which you are typically base getting involved more, or you can have diffuse. Okay, there are few cases also in which you have equal involvement of all the lobes, but typically you have a epicobasal gradient. Okay, that is when you suspect it. Heterogeneity is there, that you know that there are normal areas interspersed between them. Okay, normal areas also interspersed between them. Okay, and since you have normal areas, so that's why heterogeneity is there. Okay, so that is important. Another important point would be the features. Now this is your Fleshner society statement, distribution features, and this is your joint working group, distribution features. So you have features: honeycombing, reticulation, traction bronchiectasis, all have been discussed. A typical feature and absence of features to suggest an alternative diagnosis. It is written there. Same things are here also, distribution, same distribution, honeycomb, reticulation with or without, same thing. So there is no change in typical UIP pattern, no change. Okay, now we'll move to probable UIP. See probable UIP. Distribution is same, subpleural basal predominant by Fleischner, often heterogeneous. Reticulation with traction bronchiectasis or bronchiectasis, absence of honeycombing. Now this is an important point. See, this is an important point to discuss, that you see absence of honeycombing. Okay, remember this thing. Absence of honeycombing. So if you are not seeing honeycombing and you are seeing reticulation, traction bronchiectasis, fibrotic changes, and you rule out other causes, here also absence of features suggest an alternative diagnosis. I told you have to rule out in all these three categories. Okay, to label it as like this. So if you have absence of honeycombing by Fleischner Society, okay, it is probable UIP. Okay, if you compare, this is the point where these two, joint working group and Fleischner Society, they goes differently. Okay, here you have absence of honeycombing. Here you have this absence of honeycombing point is not mentioned by the joint working group. Rather, it has said that you can have mild GGO. See, remember this thing. I forgot to tell that you can have GGOs. You can have GGOs can be present in UIP. In UIP, GGOs can be present, but remember this thing. They will be mild only. And GGOs is a feature that suggests alternative diagnosis. Okay, when I'll write all those features which suggest diagnosis against UIP, I'll write GGOs as well. GGOs consolidation, they comes there. But importantly, even if you have GGOs, it should be mild, because if mild GGOs are there, it will go, and according to joint working group, it becomes okay probable. If you do not have honeycombing and you have mild GGOs, it goes with the probable UIP diagnosis. But you can have GGOs, okay, but it is mild. And to be precise, what we call it, that reticulations, there is also something called that you should have more than 1/3 area of that part involved with reticulations. So basically what we call that reticulations should be more than GGOs to suggest UIP. Okay, if you see GGOs predominantly or dominance of GGOs, okay, or you can say that GGOs are more than reticulations. Now this is going against UIP. This is going against UIP. Okay, remember this thing. We'll rub it. Okay, so this is going against UIP. Remember this thing. That is why whenever you have GGOs, you should always think of alternative diagnosis. But mild GGOs can come. Remember this thing. Mild GGOs can come. Okay, and as said by joint working group. So this is a point of diversion in between these two. Now look at the indeterminate for UIP. Indeterminate means that if you see here also, there is a point of diversion. Here joint working group says that subpleural and basal predominance is there, but here is said that the distribution is variable. Okay, not predominantly subpleural or basal. Fleischner says that it could be variable, but here it still sticks to the subpleural and basal predominance. Okay, now what are this is one point of diversion. Okay, so we have probable UIP, and in a determinate UIP there is a point of diversion. One is there that reticulation with some inconspicuous or minor findings that suggest an alternative diagnosis. So the findings, you have reticulations here as well. You have reticulation here also. So the reticulation is finer here. In a determinate UIP, you see fine reticulation, but you also see findings. Okay, in these two, typical UIP and probable UIP, you see typically also you have to rule out findings that goes against UIP and that findings that suggest alternative diagnosis. But in indeterminate for UIP, you see findings that suggest alternative diagnosis. See minor findings, and those findings are minor. They are not very pronounced. You see findings. Say for example, you are seeing GGOs or you see consolidation. Consolidation goes against UIP. So you see consolidation, minor consolidations might be C patch consolidation you are seeing. It may be characterized in an indeterminate for UIP. Similarly, possible mild GGOs or architectural distortion, distribution features that are not indicative of a particular fibrotic pattern. Okay, so there is a point of diversion in this indeterminate UIP as well. Okay, And then finally you have what? Finally you have this thing. Okay, CT features most consistent with alternative diagnosis. So remember this thing. What are those features? Look at those features. Very, very important. Although I'll write a list also. See, there also there's a point of diversion at this point. Perilymphatic. This perilymphatic is seen in your by a joint working group. Okay, but it's not there in this. So if you see perilymphatic nodules, okay, or the perilymphatic distribution, okay, it goes against UIP and it's there in joint working group. It's not there in Fleischner's. So if you see now what are consistent with a non-IPF diagnosis or alternative diagnosis, see if the upper or mid part of the lung is involved, or if you see peribronchovascular predominance, subpleural sparing with peribronchovascular predominance, subpleural sparing and peribronchovascular, these are areas of distribution that goes subpleural sparing. You will understand that, will read it, that 50% cases of NSIP I'm telling, they have subpleural sparing. They have subpleural sparing. Okay, so upper or mid lung involvement or subpleural sparing and peribronchovascular predominance, these are the abnormal or atypical distribution features, and they goes against IPF, because we know that subpleural area and basal, they are the typical areas of UIP. Consolidation, I just told, widespread pure GGO without acute exacerbation. I'll discuss this also, that what is it, acute exacerbation. See, in UIP you can have acute exacerbation. Okay, any ILD can have an acute exacerbation in which patient will have acute respiratory failure. Patient will come with acute respiratory failure, and when you will proceed this patient with HRCT, you will see what typical findings of that particular ILD, but you will have superimposed acute findings, okay, like edema and all. So in that case, patient will have GGO. So a patient of UIP, either the patient was already diagnosed with UIP or the patient was diagnosed with UIP with an acute attack only, okay, but patient presenting with acute respiratory failure, you did the HRCT, you saw finding of honeycombing and all those things, reticulations and all, and typically the patient is also having what, UIP findings, let's say, and patient are having what, GGOs, widespread GGOs. Now these GGOs are more. Now this can be diagnosed with acute exacerbation. Acute exacerbation. Remember this thing. And in acute exacerbation, you can have GGOs even on UIP. But remember this thing, the clinical picture would be acute. It will not, the patient will not be in a chronic or subacute stage that time. Okay. So that is why it is written that except acute exacerbation only, okay, widespread pure, without acute exacerbation, widespread pure GGOs goes against, and they're characterized under this category. Similarly, widespread mosaic attenuation is one thing, okay, with air trapping. This means, this suggests what? This suggests small airway disease. Air trapping suggests what? Airway disease, small airway disease. And small airway disease will present with what? Air trapping, which will cause mosaic perfusion on inspiratory scan. So it also goes against it. Okay, it is not also in UIP. Then you see diffuse nodules or cyst. Now these cysts are different from honeycombing cyst. These are discrete cysts. Honeycombing cyst, I have shown you the criteria of the honeycombing. I have shown you what exactly honeycombing looks like. So these cysts are discrete cysts. Okay, if you are seeing cyst scattered like this, okay, these goes against UIP, or nodules, they goes against UIP. Okay, so same findings are here on joint working group also. Consolidation, widespread GGO, widespread mosaic attenuation, diffuse nodules, micro nodules, central lobular, whatever it is, and cyst. Same findings are here also. The distribution, only additional distribution that they have added is your perilymphatic distribution also. That joint working group says that if you have perilymphatic distribution, that is also going against it. Although central lobular is in the both, same upper and mid lung predominance or peribronchovascular predominance is there. Okay, so if I you have to know these features that you have going against it, because unless and until you know these features, you have to rule it out to make a diagnosis of a typical UIP or a probable UIP. Okay, in indeterminate UIP also these features can be present in a minor degree. Okay, and you have settled articulation in indeterminate UIP. So we'll look at the each and every particular category, diagnostic category, we will see on the image how does it look like. Okay, and just for the sake of writing, I'll just write, what are the features, features inconsistent with UIP. So we discussed it just now. I'll just write them. Okay, so you have atypical distribution is one thing. Distribution, so you have either upper lobe, mid lobe involvement. Okay, subplurals pairing is there. Then third thing would be your peribronchovascular area, vascular interstitium, and fourth by joint working group, perilymphatic as well by joint working group. So atypical distribution. Then second thing, consolidation. If you're seeing consolidation, if you're seeing widespread GGOs, mild GGOs can be seen, widespread GGOs goes against it. Typically GGOs more than reticulations. Okay, and obviously rule out acute cause, acute exacerbation. Fourth thing would be nodules and cyst. These cysts are what? These are what? Discrete cysts. Okay, and the last thing that I have lost or I've missed basically is mosaic perfusion. Okay, so these are the 5 things or that you should know by heart, because they goes against UIP. Okay, they goes against UIP. And we'll just see the different so we discussed this image. Okay, this group of images we discussed earlier also. This was your typical UIP. Okay, no point in discussing again and again. Same apicobasal gradient, honeycombing, typical UIP pattern. This is what typical UIP. Okay, no need to discuss. Okay, let's go to the next image. See this. Now if you see this closely, now these are the see the base here also. Base is involved more than upper part of the lung. Okay, base is involved more than the upper part. And what I'm seeing here is, see, there is reticulation, subpleural reticulation is there. Do you see? Okay, let me write. Okay, so you see apicobasilar gradient. Do you see it? Answer is yes. Okay, so distribution is okay, fine. Distribution goes with UIP. Are you seeing reticulations in subpleural area? Answer is yes, I'm seeing. See, reticulations are there, but they're less, little bit less. Are you seeing honeycombing? Answer is no. We do not see honeycombing. Honeycombing is not visible. Rather, what you're seeing is, okay, I think I have changed the image. I've changed the image, so I should write it. See, this was the image. This was the image. Okay, see. So here you can see there's a apicobasal gradient. Apicobasal gradient. Answer is yes. So distribution goes with this. Second thing that I have reticulations. So you have reticulations. Answer is yes. And third thing is honeycombing that you see. Honeycombing is not there. No. Rather, what you are seeing here is what? This is what? Traction bronchiectasis. This is your traction bronchiectasis. See, these are tubular structures. They're continuous with your bronchioles. They're seen in the periphery. They're surrounding by fibrotic opacities or reticulations. This is your traction bronchiectasis. You will not see multiple cysts. It can be confused. If if you see this. This is your axial section. On axial section, it looks like cyst here. It looks like cyst here. But when you do the coronal section, it looks like a tubular opacities, tubular structures which are dilated. You see bronchioles. You are seeing bronchioles that are dilated in the periphery. So it's the traction bronchiectasis, and that is due to fibrosis, secondary to fibrosis. But you do not see honeycombing here. Honeycombing is not visible, and that is why. But the distribution pattern is classical, so it goes in what category? It goes in the category of where you do not see honeycombing, but you see the findings. It's a probable. It's a probable UIP case. It's a probable UIP case. And just like positive predictive value of positive predictive value of a typical UIP case. In typical UIP case, the positive predictive value was 90%. That when you do biopsy in 90% of the cases of typical UIP, you will find UIP on histopath as well. But on probable UIP, this positive predictive value goes down to 50%. So only 50% of such cases on HRCT will come with typical UIP pattern on histopath. Now look at the third case. The third case. Now in third case, you can clearly see here the lungs, they look fine in the upper part, slight subpleural reticulations here also, but on the base, their base is affected. Okay, subpleural areas are affected. Okay, you can see this subpleural areas are affected. Typical reticulations are there. Subpleural reticulations are there present. Okay, so distribution. Okay, there is a picobasal gradient is there. Gradient is present. Subpleural reticulations are there, but no honeycombing is there. And the reticulation that you are seeing here is nothing but fine reticulations. Fine reticulations are there. Okay, fine reticulations. And there's small amount of GGOs. If you see, there are GGOs also. Okay, so you'll classify it under indeterminate UIP. It goes in UIP, indeterminate UIP, because you're seeing fine reticulations. Okay, and you see minor findings of things that goes against UIP. So you see minor areas of GGOs as well in the subpleural area. So GGOs, no, it's a subjective thing. There are few persons who will say, few radiologists will say that it is a probable UIP case also, but in my opinion, it is typical. It's an indeterminate case because the reticulations are very fine. They're not quite large. Okay, it's a subjective thing only, but yeah, and the possibility of this or the positive predictive value of this particular case goes even down to come out as a UIP. Okay, come out as a UIP. Now, if you see this particular case, okay, this particular case, see, now we have this at these are the lung bases. See, these are the lung bases. What you're seeing, you are seeing GGOs. Yeah, we are seeing GGOs here. I can see GGOs. I can see mosaic perfusion also. I can see mosaic perfusion very typically present, and I can see now subpleural areas are not involved. Okay, although base is involved, definitely you can see the GGOs here. These are the GGOs in the mid part of the lung. Now, if you see this is the upper part of lung. Upper part of the lung is also involved. These anterior areas are involved. Okay, so you have fibrotic areas. Now you see GGOs, you see mosaic perfusion. Okay, what is it? It looks like a hypersensitive pneumonitis. It doesn't look like a UIP. So when you see this thing, okay, there are so many features. Even the distribution. Okay, basilar distribution is there. Lower lobes are there. Okay, getting affected. Even upper lobes is slightly affected. Okay, reticulations are there. Here, at this point, you can also see traction bronchitis also there. So fibrotic changes are there definitely. I can see there are fibrotic changes. Reticulations are there. Fibrotic changes are there. Okay, we'll write reticulations to be present. Okay, so reticulations are there. Traction bronchitis is there, but pattern is also. You can say that it could be it could be mid lung and lower lung is quite commonly affected, but you have GGOs and you have mosaic perfusion. And the moment you see, these GGOs are widespread. These are widespread GGOs. See, almost whole of the lung is affected with GGOs. And you are seeing mosaic, very typical mosaic perfusion in the base of the lungs, which is a feature suggesting alternative diagnosis. Now you have two features suggesting alternative diagnosis here. Okay, and you have fine reticulations. Okay, and you do not see subpleural honeycombing and all those. So it is a typical, if you diagnose this looks like a chronic hypersensitive pneumonitis, subacute to chronic, because you have subacute features, you have small airway disease. That's why you have this. So it looks like hypersensitive pneumonitis, and this, if you want to diagnose it as UIP, you will label it as CT features inconsistent with UIP, or it's a non-IPF diagnosis. Okay, so it's non-IPF diagnosis on HRCT. Now, the very few cases, the positive predictive value of this coming as UIP is very, very less. Okay. So we discussed almost, this was PPFE. Okay, we discussed almost everything. Now this case, let's discuss this case also. So in this case, you can see this case, patient presented with acute respiratory failure. Patient present with acute respiratory failure, and patient, had this HRCT image. So you can see honeycombing here. You can see GGOs. So you can see GGOs. GGOs are present, and these are widespread GGOs all over the lung. And you can see honeycombing, features of honeycombing here in subpleural area. So distribution is also going in favor of UIP. Honeycombing is also there. Now, since the patient is having acute respiratory failure and GGOs, this diagnosis becomes acute exacerbation of UIP. Okay, and you can have widespread GGOs in case, only in this case, which is which we wrote that it should not be acute exacerbation on that particular classifying, where we are classifying. So that is one thing that you need to remember. In acute case you can have, and in acute case basically there is a worsening of honeycombing that is seen, worsening of fibrosis seen, and you have edema as well. That is why you have what this. So we discuss, I think, almost all these cases. We discussed about this article. Okay, this article we have discussed, and I have seen we discussed cases from this article only. Okay, so there is nothing other thing that is left apart from imaging and all. Okay, one more article. Okay, this is a structured format of an ILD, or okay, how do you write ILD? Okay, one more thing, few things are left, so let's discuss them also. Few things are left to go in much detail. I'm going in detail of UIP. It is important to go in detail of UIP. See this particular table of this article, quite important article. See, extra pulmonary thin section CT findings associated with diffuse lung disease that cause pulmonary fibrosis. So basically, what are these findings? That when you report an HRCT and you suspect a case of UIP, or you suspect pulmonary fibrosis for that matter, whatever ILD, suspected ILD case, in that case, okay, we know that we need to rule out, before labeling it something as idiopathic interstitial pneumonia, you should also look, apart from lung, other things like airway, mediastinum, vascular, heart, esophagus, pleura, liver, and bones. These are the things that will be visible. A part of abdominal sections also there in HRCT. So you have to look these extra pulmonary structures very diligently. Why it is important? Because you may find some findings which goes against idiopathic interstitial pneumonia, and they suggest a cause for that particular ILD. And the moment you have these findings, which suggest a particular cause for this fibrosis, now the question of idiopathic word is out. It could be related to some cause, and that's a good thing, because if you treat that disease, you treat that ILD as well. Although fibrosis will not heal, okay, it is not irreversible, but it will slow down the progression, because now you have a diagnosis, you have a cause. Okay, say for example, if you have airway and you see bronchial wall thickening, this means that inflammatory, airway is inflamed, so it could be smoking related lung disease that is in question. If you have mediastinum, you see calcified nodes, sarcoidosis or silicosis should suspect. These also have ILD patterns. We discussed about these can also have reticulations. Okay. If you see vasculature, pulmonary hypertension can be there. Okay. Similarly, if you have heart, right ventricular dilation, or this, it also indicates pulmonary hypertension due to right heart failure. You may see right ventricular hypertrophy, suggesting of RV strain. On esophagus, if you see esophageal dilation or hiatal hernia, okay, esophageal dilation, it goes in favor of scleroderma. Okay, so CTD or collagen vascular disease associated. This is basically scleroderma associated ILD. Okay, these are connective tissue disease. CTD connective tissue disease, UIP, or hiatal hernia. Hiatal hernia also one thing. If you have hiatal hernia, you have constant recurrent aspiration. Hiatal hernia can cause recurrent aspiration. Now, recurrent aspiration will also have basal predominance of those fibrotic areas. So, recurrent aspiration also says if you have hiatal hernia, you should think of this diagnosis as well. The patient has recurrent aspiration, patient developed fibrosis due to recurrent aspiration. Okay, that is one thing. If you have pleural abnormalities like pleural thickening, calcified pleural plaques, you should once you know that there are pleural plaques, you should think of asbestosis. Okay, and one thing, if you have pleural effusion, all those, you have RA or SLE also in. Okay, and what is the drug that causes it? Amiodarone. Amiodarone can cause that. Similarly, liver. if you have hyperattenuating hepatic parenchyma, amiodarone toxicity can cause this because it causes iron deposition. Okay. Similarly, you have bones. If you see distal clavicular erosions, it goes in favor of RA, rheumatoid arthritis, erosions because erosive arthritis. It's a erosive arthritis, RA. Okay. So these are the features that you should keep an eye on. Okay, or the extrapulmonary findings, that it's a very good box that is there. So if you see these, okay, these are the findings that suggest you will be more valuable to the clinicians because you are giving a hint to the clinicians, okay, that this might be the cause. Okay, this might be the cause. So this is one important area that one should know. Okay, I think nothing more from this particular article. There is one more article. Okay, there are few important things that I would like to enlist. Okay, in this article. Now this is an article of American Thoracic Society. Okay, you can refer to this also, but no need to refer. So they have come down to few conclusions after a particular study, and we need to know these conclusions. Okay, we need to know these conclusions. So reading these conclusions, okay, with you, just read it with me. These are to be known. See, these conclusions are only important. You need not to, and the summary of these recommendations are important. No need to go into detail of this. Only the summary of recommendation, what they suggest. See, for adult patients with newly diagnosed, newly detected ILD of apparent and unknown cause, who are clinically suspected of IPF. Okay, a clinically suspected case of IPF, we recommend taking a detailed history of both medication use and environmental exposure at home, work, and other places the patient frequently visits to exclude potential causes of ILD. Because now it is a motherhood statement, there is strong evidence for this recommendation that whenever you have a suspected case of IPF, you should rule out the cause, you should take a proper history. Okay, and we also recommend serological testing to exclude connective tissue diseases as a potential cause of ILD. So it is important. Serological testing and a detailed history, okay, and a detailed travel history is important because they will give you an idea of the cause. These are the recommendations. Next recommendation, see, for patient with newly detected ILD of apparently unknown cause. Apparently means that it looks like there is an unknown cause, but you do these things to rule out the cause. Who are clinically suspected of having IPF and have an HRCT pattern of probable UIP, indeterminate for UIP, or an alternative diagnosis. The last three categories, no typical UIP is written there. So we suggest the cellular analysis of their bronchoalveolar lavage fluid. We suggest the surgical lung biopsy. Okay, and the panel made no recommendation for or against transbronchial lung biopsy. The panel made no recommendation for or against lung cryobiopsy. So there are 4 recommendations. I'll list them. So any case of probable UIP, indeterminate UIP, or alternative diagnosis, the last 3 categories we just discussed, in all those cases except typical UIP, you should go for a BAL, bronchoalveolar lavage. You should go for that, and you should also go for a biopsy. Okay, so all atypical cases, all those last 3 categories, you should go for these 2 things, BAL and biopsy. Okay, biopsy is recommended there. So what American Thoracic Society suggests, that if you have atypical finding, whether you have probable UIP pattern on HRCT, whether you have indeterminate or you have CT features against UIP or with alternative diagnosis or non-IPF diagnosis, you should go for these 2 investigations. Now another important point is that what I want to highlight, that as per Fleshner, Fleshner says that, okay, Fleshner doesn't recommend biopsy in, I should write it here. Okay, according to Fleshner, this was what we discussed just now was ATS recommendation. According to Fleshner, biopsy is recommended only in where? Only in cases of indeterminate, cases and cases of alternative diagnosis. Fleshner says that you do biopsy here only. Okay, Fleshner says that if you have a case of probable UIP, probable UIP, you can go with the treatment without biopsy. Okay, so only ATS recommends biopsy in probable as well. In probable UIP, Flashner says you do not need to go for biopsy, you can start straight away. Okay, that is one thing. Also bronchoalveolar lavage. Okay, bronchoalveolar lavage. Now important point is that Flashner says also one thing. I think I should write it separately only. So Flashner's recommendation. We know what is ATS recommendation. Okay, you have to go for biopsy in all atypical cases, BAL in all atypical cases. But what Flashner says, and this is where the did have it, Flashner Society recommendation. See, they say that in case of probable UIP, you should look for a typical clinical syndrome that if in clinical context, if clinically, okay, age of the patient is more than 60 years and no apparent causes there, okay, only then if you have these things, okay, if you have more than 60 years or no apparent cause, only then in case of probable UIP you will go for biopsy. Okay, so that these are the recommendations. I'm again telling it. There are two things. One is Flashner's, one is your joint working group of various societies, American Thoracic Society, okay, whatever these are. I just wrote there. So they suggest that in case of typical UIP, you do not need biopsy, obviously. You are straight away making a diagnosis. In case of indeterminate UIP or UIP against, UIP favoring alternative diagnosis category, okay, in third and fourth category. In those cases, you will need biopsy by both, whether Flashner or joint working. Both suggest biopsy there, and BAL also. But Flashner says that if you have a case of probable biopsy, probable UIP, in that case, you will not go for biopsy. You will go for biopsy only when if the patient is having age of more than 60 years and there is no apparent cause. If these two findings are, confirmed, then only go for biopsy in probable UIP. Otherwise, you will not go for probable UIP biopsy in probable UIP by Flashners. Although joint working group suggests biopsy even in probable UIP. That is all. Okay. So that is the point of diversion here. Okay. So that's what we discussed. So okay. And there was, they suggest surgical lung biopsy, but they're not suggesting anything favor or against of, that is not our job. That is clinician's perspective about these, what type of biopsy to go for. Next thing that you need to know, for patients with newly detected ILD of apparently unknown cause who are clinically suspected of having IPF and have HRCT pattern of UIP. Now here it is telling about typical UIP. Typical UIP. Then we suggest not performing cellular analysis for their BAL. Okay, we recommend not performing this biopsy, surgical lung biopsy, and we recommend not performing transbronchial biopsy. We recommend not performing the lung cryobiopsy, meaning that what they are saying that you should not perform anything, you should straight away in typical UIP start the treatment. That's what they are saying. Okay, and lastly, this important discussion that for patients with newly detected ILD of apparently unknown cause who are clinically suspected of having IPF, clinically suspected case, whatever IPF you have, now HRCT, any HRCT findings or any category, we suggest multidisciplinary discussion for diagnostic decision making. Okay, we recommend not measuring serum MMP. Now these are biomarkers. These are what they have listed as biomarkers. So there are biomarkers also which suggest UIP pattern. So biomarkers, serum biomarkers by evidence. This is evidence-based article. So they do not suggest, recommendation is not for the biomarkers, but they recommend multidisciplinary discussion. Now this is important. See, multidisciplinary means that discussion between radiology, discussion between your pulmonologist, Okay, discussion with microbiologist, not microbiologist, microbiologist, pathologist. Okay, so multidisciplinary discussion is recommended in any case of HRCT, whatever category it is. Okay, it is important. Multidisciplinary discussion, because now in every case, even if you have typical UIP, you go for that. Now a very beautiful flow chart is given in this article that I would like to discuss. Now this is also, these are the HRCT typical wo, and same, typical UIP, probable UIP, or indeterminate for UIP, the same categories are also there in your histopath. Histopath also classified with the same categories: UIP, probable UIP, indeterminate, or alternate diagnosis. Okay, remember this thing. Another thing that is there is see this flow chart. And this is a very important flow chart, I would say. Okay, see this flow chart. Now you have a patient suspected of having IPF. Whatever we discuss, only those are the only things that we'll be dealing with here. Okay, so you have a patient suspected to have IPF. Okay, potential cause, associated condition. Now you look for the cause. You are not able to find the cause, or you are able to find the cause. If you are able to find the cause, you go for HRCT. Okay, on HRCT, it's a possibility that you are not able to see the findings of that particular disease of which you are looking for a cause. Okay, then you go for a chest HRCT pattern. Okay, and if yes, then definitely you make a diagnosis that is not IPF. Say for example, you found SLE as a cause, so you are seeing SLE related fibrosis. Now if you are not able to find a cause, or you have ruled out causes, only that where you go for chest HRCT pattern. And on chest HRCT pattern, either you will see a UIP, typical, this is a typical UIP, or you see probable UIP, indeterminate UIP, alternate diagnosis, these three categories. In the last three categories, or in the first category, whatever you have, you go for a multidisciplinary discussion. That's what I'm saying. Even typical UIP will go for MDD, multidisciplinary discussion. After that, only in, according to ATS or according to American Thoracic Society, only probable, indeterminate, or alternative diagnosis will go for these two things: BAL and surgical lung biopsy. According to Fleischner, probable UIP only with the clinical syndrome of more than 60 years of age and patient having no cause, apparent cause, will go for what? Biopsy, otherwise it's not. But since this is a flowchart of ATS article, so definitely BAL and surgical biopsy will be done in only these three categories, and typical UIP will not need these two, so it will simply go further, and MDD will be performed. After this, if you now, after you have biopsy, now you have a biopsy findings, you have BAL findings, those can suggest alternative diagnosis. Okay, so just like now we have a HRCT findings, similarly we will be having a biopsy finding also, and biopsy findings are also categorized under the same categories like typical UIP. Okay, and biopsy findings also typical UIP, then you have probable UIP. Okay, I just told you indeterminate for UIP, and lastly you have alternative diagnosis. The same categories are also in the biopsy finding or histopath. So after you have, once you have biopsy finding also and you have HRCT finding also, once you have this two things with you, now you have to go for this particular diagram. See this diagram. Now you have a suspected case of IPF, and you have histopathology pattern here, HRCT pattern here. Same categories: UIP, probable UIP, indeterminate UIP, alternate access. This. Now, if you have UIP here, typical, obviously it is IPF. If you have probable IUIP and you see UIP on histopath, it is also UIP. If you see, so basically, what is the criteria of diagnosing UIP? Either on histopath or HRCT. If you have typical UIP pattern, any one of them, either on this or on this, the diagnosis becomes IPF. See this. If you have UIP here or you have UIP here, the diagnosis is what? IPF only. Okay, diagnosis IPF only. So all the categories of UIP here. Only where alternative diagnosis come into play, then you think of other. The category changes. Okay, and obviously histopathology is always superior over radiology, because histopathology is what exactly is the gold standard. So that is why when you have alternative diagnosis on histopath and you have UIP as HRCT, the answer is non-IPF. But if you have UIP on histopath and you have HRCT to be alternative diagnosis, still IPF could be likely. That is because histopathology is obviously gold standard. Radiology is superior above. Okay, so you have alternative diagnosis. Here IPF is likely. Now here, okay, so there are categories where you will see IPF likely. This thing yellow category is there. Okay, and these are red categories are non-IPF diagnosis. Okay, so even if you have alternative diagnosis and the patient going into with UIP, you have IPF likely. But if you have alternative diagnosis on HRCT and you have either probable, indeterminate, or this, answer is simply non-IPF diagnosis. Okay, non-IPF diagnosis. Remember this thing. Or if you have alternative diagnosis on all cases of alternative, because if you have alternative diagnosis on histopath, then whether it is UIP or not on HRCT doesn't matter. It becomes a non-UIP diagnosis, non-IPF diagnosis only. Okay, remember this thing. But so you have IPF likely. If you have indeterminate for UIP on both, then you have indeterminate for IPF here in that case. Now it's a very dicey category where you have to repeat biopsy as well, because biopsy might not be adequate. Now if you have indeterminate for UIP on this and you have probable UIP here, or you have probable here and determinate here. Okay, if you have a combo of probable and indeterminate, either way, whether on HRCT or histopath, in that case still it is IPF likely. So in that case, what exactly you look? So it's written there. Okay, it's written there, and you have to read this. So in that case, you'll read this particular thing. Okay, in that case, you have to look for again either the patient is more than 70 years of age. Patient is more than 70 years of age. These are the findings. Okay, of a IPF I'm discussing IPF likely when any of the following features are present. These are the features that you have to know. Okay, what are the features? Moderate to severe traction bronchiectasis, defined as, what is moderate to severe traction bronchiectasis? Mild traction bronchiectasis or bronchiectasis in 4 or more lobes, including the lingual as a lobe, or moderate to severe traction bronchiectasis in 2 or more lobes. Okay, I'll just zoom it. Okay, you might not be able to see it also. Zoom it. See this. See this. You see moderate to severe traction bronchiectasis or bronchiectasis defined as a mild traction bronchiectasis in 4 or more lobes. Okay, so if you have 4 or more lobes are involved in the mild category of traction bronchiectasis, and you count lingual segment also as a lobe here. Okay, or moderate to severe traction bronchiectasis in 2 or more lobes, in that case you describe it to be a criteria for moderate to severe bronchiectasis or bronchiectasis in a man over the age of 50 years, in a woman of age of more than 60 years. If you have BAL findings of more than 30%, if you have reticulation, more than 30% reticulation on HRCT, and an age of more than 70 years, then, and if you have increased neutrophils and or absence of lymphocytes in BAL, these are typical BAL findings, and if you have multidisciplinary discussion reaches a confident diagnosis of IPF. So there are 4 points, okay, in which IPF become likely. Now remember this thing, everywhere age is more than 60 or more than 70, on the basis of gender, but it is an elderly patient. That is why, because UIP happens only in elderly, okay, typically on elderly. But even if the patient is a middle age, more than 40 and less than 60, but the patient has a familial history of pulmonary fibrosis, then you have to take into consideration also middle age. Okay, with this, so mid age, is relaxed. There is a relaxation in the age criteria when you have a familial history of pulmonary fibrosis. Okay, but so you have an age of more than 60 or more than 70, and if you have familial history, then age relaxation is there, and superimposed by this bronchiectasis, either this finding is there, either you have typical BAL findings, Either you have more than 30% reticulation on HRCT, or you have MDD suggesting a confident diagnosis of IPF. If any of the four are there, then your diagnosis is made like IPF likely. Okay, otherwise it goes as non-IPF diagnosis here. And okay, and here you can see these categories. So discuss almost every category, every possible dimension I could discuss about UIP I did. Okay, uh, and I would recommend to go through these articles. Okay, and so this was a discussion, very detailed and very comprehensive discussion over UIP. Okay, now there are small topics and small ILDs are remaining, so we will discuss that in another video. Okay, so let's discuss that. Thank you.